Good morning, everybody. I hope I can be heard loud and clear. If you could just give me a thumbs up if you guys can hear me loud and clear. Awesome. We'll just start off in a couple of minutes. Let's just take 2 minutes and then we'll start off with the program. Just 2 minutes. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being with us here on this Sunday morning. It's a slightly serious, very interesting topic. I hope you guys take away a lot of interesting takeaways from this discussion. So first of all, good morning to all our viewers who are here with us from Mumbai and other parts of the country. So, you know, the world economy and the Indian economy is standing at a very interesting, very delicate juncture today. हमारे वर्ल्ड ने और इंडिया ने लास्ट 100 साल में ऐसा सिनेरियो नहीं देखा है. If I go back in history, अगर मैं 30 years का हिस्ट्री लेता हूँ, our world has seen a lot of different types of crises. 2008 में we had the global financial crisis. 2000 में we had the dot-com bubble. 1997 में हम लोग ने एशियन फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस देखा था. बट ये सारे क्राइसिस में जो एक चीज कॉमन था वाज दैट ये सारे फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस थे. सो द वे टू डील विद ईच ऑफ दिस क्राइसिस, इसका एक प्लेबुक है. देयर आर सर्टेन थिंग्स इकोनॉमिक्स में जो हमें कॉलेज स्कूल में पढ़ाया जाता है कि यू नीड टू बी काउंटर सिक्लिकल. सो पीपल हैव द स्ट्रेटजी, दे हैव सम टूल्स जो रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया या फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री हर कंट्री की एम्प्लॉय करती है, इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड, वर्ल्ड बैंक एम्प्लॉय करते हैं. But what we are facing right now, we are facing a global health crisis. This is something that no political leader, no business leader alive today has dealt with. The last time this happened at this scale was in 1918, 1919 when we had the Spanish flu. Today, 50% of the world's population is in lockdown. तो ऐसा कोई strategy, कोई tool, कोई भी business leader, political leader के पास में है नहीं कि how do we deal with this. So we are in a very unprecedented scenario. Some of the impacts of COVID will be very short term, जो for example 1 महीना 2 महीना में शायद चले जाएंगे, और कुछ impacts ऐसे होंगे जो आज से काफी साल तक या हमारे लाइफ टाइम तक लास्ट कर सकते हैं. They could be very permanent in nature. So to understand how the impact could be on different aspects of the Indian economy and उसका relation global economy से कैसे होता है, we have a very interesting set of panelists with us today. हमारे सारे पैनलिस्ट डिफरेंट इंडस्ट्री से बिलोंग करते हैं. उनका एक्सपीरियंस, उनका एक्सपर्टीज इज इन देयर डिफरेंट इंडस्ट्रीज, एंड टुडे दे विल बी शेयरिंग विद अस व्हाट देयर व्यू इज कि आज से शॉर्ट टर्म एंड लॉन्ग टर्म कोविड का इम्प्लीकेशन डिफरेंट इंडस्ट्रीज में कैसा हो सकता है. ऑफ कोर्स आई अप्रिशिएट दिस, एंड आई एम श्योर ऑल ऑफ अस अप्रिशिएट दिस, दैट दिस इज समथिंग नोबडी हैज द परफेक्ट राइट आंसर, but all of us are trying to make our best judgment and in our respective industries and come out of this stronger. So I will not take more of your time. We have 7 panelists with us here today. Hamare 3 panelists are from Mumbai. We have with us Mr. Apurv Marda. We have with us Mr. Bankat Mandhania, Mr. Mangalam Malu. All 3 are from Mumbai. We have 2 from Chennai, Mr. Prince Kapoor and Mr. Varun Kabra. We also have with us Mr. Vivek Agrawal from Pune and Ms. Vamika Mimani Moore, who is joining us from Bangalore. So we'll start off with our first panelist, which is Mr. Varun Kabra. Mr. Varun Kabra is a domain consultant at Hexaware Technologies. He's an MBA graduate from XLRI Jamshedpur. He's been working in the Indian IT sector for the last almost 10 years now. Mr. Varun, is your line? Yeah. Hi, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, Madhav. Can you hear me?
Just a second. Just one issue the audio. Just a second.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Can you hear me, Madhav?
Yeah, I can. Am I clear?
Yeah, you're clear.
So, thank you so much for being with us. I think the question for you is, I'll start off with like this. TCS, which is the largest player in the Indian ITI sector, which employs almost more than 4 lakh people, made a bold statement that they want to take 75% of their workforce to a work from home format in the next 5 years. So this can have big implication on a lot of different sectors. So could you share with us your views on, is this really implementable? Is this practical? And what could be the impact on the Indian IT sector and other sectors in general?
Okay. So, hello, good morning, everyone, to all the esteemed panel members and to everyone who is watching this event. And first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Madhav Madda for inviting me to participate in this interactive and knowledge enhancing session. So, thanks a lot. And thank you for the introduction, Madhav. So, to answer your question, Madhav, yes. As you rightly pointed out, COVID 19 is an unparalleled event in the history of mankind, probably. So it is going to have a lot of long time plus a short time impacts. And as all other industries of the global economy and Indian economy have been affected, IT industry is no such exception. Even IT industry has been very badly affected by this particular pandemic, and more so because most of the clients of the Indian IT sector, to be very specific, 80% of their revenues come from clients who are situated in the United States of America and Europe. So these are a major client base for all the IT sectors, whether it's a large company or a small company. So this is what we cater to. Those are our clients and those are our customers. And as all of you guys know that these two continents, or rather places, have been hit very badly by this pandemic, and their economy is also taking a downward spiral. So a lot of political leaders and everyone, all economists are trying to salvage the situation, but still it looks pretty grim right now. Now, coming back to your question, Madhav, is work from home going to be the new norm? Yes, it is going to be a new norm, especially for the IT services industry, where you just require probably a desktop, laptop, and a net connection and a few softwares here and there. So it is going to be the new norm because as you know that a lot of large companies have 30,000, 50,000, 10,000, 1 lakh people working in office, which is no more going to be there. Not many companies, even after this COVID, the situation calms down, are going to invite or going to let all the employees to come to office unless there is a vaccine or a medicine in place, which we all do not know when this will happen. This is happening, and a lot of companies have actually, in fact, even my company has shifted all hardware requirements, like all the laptops, all the systems of the employees to their employees' homes, and they are all working right now to deliver services to clients. So work from home is going to be a new norm. Having said that, work from home was not something that came because of COVID. It was always there, but the scale at which it is going to get implemented has totally changed because of this COVID scenario. It is going to become the new norm, and it is going to happen at a large scale. Companies cannot do away with it, especially the IT industries. Having said that, there are a lot of challenges, especially there are challenges or there are a lot of concerns around security, because we do handle customer data, which is a very private, and there are a lot of confidential clauses associated with it. So the security needs to be enhanced, and there have been cases where a lot of security breaches have taken place and clients have taken a strong action. So the companies have to accept that work from home is the new norm, and they have to invest in advanced security features. That is going to happen, and we cannot turn away with that. So when TCS makes such a bold statement, they do it rightly. It is going to be the new norm where work-life balance will actually lead to work-life integration. There will not be any more work-life balance. It is all work-life integration. Your home is going to be your office for IT services industry. But here I would also like to point out that there are certain customers who do not allow employees to work from home because they deal with very like banks generally have their own centers which are highly secured, and there's a lot of customer data which has to be protected. तो उसके लिए वो अलाउ नहीं करेंगे. तो स्टिल अभी भी काफी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में 95% जो लोग हैं वो घर से काम कर रहे हैं, लेकिन 5% लोग हैं जिनको ऑफिस जाना पड़ रहा है. इसीलिए गवर्नमेंट ने भी कुछ प्रोविजंस दिए हैं उनको एसेंशियल सर्विसेज डिक्लेयर करने के लिए. तो हैविंग सेड दैट इट विल बी अ मिक्स, बट ये बहुत ज्यादा वर्क फ्रॉम होम की तरफ ही बढ़ रहा है, स्पेशली व्हेन यू कंसीडर दी आईटी सर्विसेज सेक्टर, बिकॉज इसमें आपका कुछ मशीन्स आपको जरूरत है नहीं. खाली आपका एक लैपटॉप या डेस्कटॉप होगा तो थिंग्स विल डू, एंड लॉट ऑफ सॉफ्टवेयर वर्चुअली आप ऑनलाइन आप डाल सकते हो. बस अच्छी सिक्योरिटी के साथ दिस इज गोइंग टू बी द न्यू नॉर्म in the post-COVID scenario. And this is a big change, mind you, because our managers, our employees, they are not used to with such a kind of working. So it's a huge change even in the mindset which will be required, but which is a necessity. We can't do away with it. That's how we will be delivering the services. So that's to your answer, Madhav, for the work from home model.
Got it. Could you also just talk a little briefly about how your delivery model will change because of the security features, and how will the selling change to the client? If you could just touch upon that very briefly, and then we can come back in the Q&A as well.
Okay. See, one important thing that was happening was a lot of our salespeople and everyone who had to sell their services, they had to travel on site. So the travel was a norm that we had to go to the client place and do it. But अब वो नहीं हो पा रहा है क्योंकि as you know all the airlines are shut and we can't travel from one country to another. So it is all happening through social collaboration platforms. So जो भी है video meetings हो रही हैं. There are a lot of the technology right now is helping people to collaborate. Even the delivery model, as I said it's a challenging because managers and employees are not used to it. But with the help of technology and a lot of collaboration tools, people are trying to connect, they are on calls, they are trying to discuss, they are trying to have conversations, and they are trying to deliver solutions to the client. So it's all happening on the virtual world, and technology is playing a very big part to it. Your travel has become restricted, and a lot of salespeople and everyone, they are all, a little struggle is there because face-to-face meetings are any day better than just having a meeting over the phone or over a video. But with the technology being so advanced now, a lot of IT services are taking advantage of these technology tools, and they are conducting these meetings, and they are doing their sales, pre-sales work, the delivery, client meetings, team meetings. Everything is happening over social collaboration platforms.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So we'll come back to you on the Q&A if the audience has any questions, or we can just have some follow-up. Thank you.
Sure.
So we'll move to the next panelist, Mr. Pankaj Mandhaniya. So Mr. Pankaj Mandhaniya is a director at Asterisk India Private Limited. It's India's largest processor and exporter of fly ash. He's been involved in the Indian real estate and infra growth story for the last 3 decades now. Hi, Mr. Pankaj, can you hear us?
Yes, Madhav, thank you very much. I can hear very well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely clear. Thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure, man. Thank you.
So the question to you is, how does COVID-19 impact India's real estate and the infrastructure sector? How do you see changes happening in the near term and long term? Any suggestions for real estate industry, government, how to come out of this stronger?
Madhav, thank you very much for inviting me here. Thanks to all the viewers. Thanks to the panelists to be here. Let me tell you, where are we today? COVID-19, a word not heard before a few months. Okay. COVID-19, we say is a pandemic. To be honest, I understood what a pandemic is different from an epidemic is also a very short time back. The epidemic affects certain regions. Pandemic is probably global. So in this scale, it's an incident which is never seen, we've never imagined, and we never lived. Absolutely, there's no precedent to this experience that what we actually experience right now. You already said half the world's population is under lockdown. Okay, we really have no idea how we're going to come out of it, frankly. Today, the atmosphere is more about uncertainty and fear. And we know about one thing for sure, mankind is very, very afraid of something which is never experienced, never seen. Fear is an overpowering emotion over here, where trust will only be the antidote, which is the most elusive thing. आज के डेट में कोई एक दूसरे पे भरोसा नहीं कर रहा है, कोई किसको मिलना नहीं चाह रहा है, for the fear कि यार उस बंदे को क्या है, मेरे को नहीं हो जाएगा. So this is where we are coming out from. यहाँ पे I'll tell you one thing, I would really start structuring myself. महाभारत में एक किस्सा है, कुरुक्षेत्र वॉर में जब गुरुद्रोण की हत्या हो गई थी, अश्वत्थामा रिलीज्ड एंड नारायण अस्त्र. नारायण अस्त्र ये अस्त्र था जो जिस मनुष्य में लड़ने की भावना हो या हथियार हाथ में हो, उस पर्सन को, उस ह्यूमन बीइंग को, उस बीइंग को इट वुड डिस्ट्रॉय बाय फायर. ये होते ही पूरे पांडव सेना में त्राही मच गई, बिकॉज पीपल आर देयर टू फाइट अ वॉर एंड एवरीबडी हैड इंटेंशन टू किल समबडी और हैड अ वेपन इन हैंड. अब जब यहाँ पे हुआ तो सब पांडव भगवान कृष्ण के पास गए कि पार्थ अब इसका होगा क्या. तो उन्होंने एक ही चीज हमको कहा कि प्लीज रिमूव दिस फियर, प्लीज रिमूव दिस इंटेंशन ऑफ वॉर, lay down your weapons and stay calm. आप सिर्फ शांत बने रहें. आप शांत रहेंगे तो नारायण अस्त्र की जब अवधि खत्म होगी, जब उसका प्रलय खत्म होगा, उसका टाइम खत्म होगा, तो अपने आप शांत हो जाएगा. And this is how we will come out of it. So I would relate that experience to today's lifestyle. I said, let's be relaxed. Let's not get afraid of anything. Okay? When we become afraid, we react to situation. We don't tenderly respond to situations. And that's when we make the most of the errors. So the first thing first I would say is let us keep calm. Let us keep peace over here. It has come with time, will go away with time. Today we become so accustomed to a modern, ever-speeding lifestyle. Okay, we are not producing anything, but we're devouring the world's natural resources like it's never done better for tomorrow. Life has become so fast, it's become a ticking time clock. We have no time for ourselves. We got no time for friends, no time for relatives. We have really no time for parents too, to be honest. And that's the fact of life. This pandemic has actually infused a comatose situation in today's modern lifestyle. This is a time to take to God. This time to understand that He has given this pause period for us to understand where we really run into. Are we really wanting to run this lifestyle? No, we don't want to do that. This whole thought process has to be changed. I mean, the whole fundamental change has to change. My mindset has to change. Okay, everything we know gets created twice. Once in my mental state, then we really start about doing things physically. But yes, let me tell you one thing. I always believe, a firm believer, that everything happens for the best. I think this pause period is there for us to recollect that really we want to do something right, or are we really going the wrong path. Madhav, having said this, okay, the most relatable experience, as you also pointed out, is the 2008 lockdown. I would put it there. The business froze for almost a year. The whole world came to a standstill. Business world, I would say, came to a standstill for a year. But we did come out of it. Today, it's also not only affecting the financial resources, but most important, the human resources. People are afraid. They all want to go back home. They just all want to go back home. Just to go back home to their villages, to the safety of the family net. Okay. Now, how will we move from here? I think there are fundamental duties that all of us have to perform. Me at my level, the government at a level, the industry at a level, everybody has to chip in their bit so that we all come out of it stronger. one thing I realized, Madhav, is that living is not expensive. It's actually my lifestyle. Moving forward, affordability will become the mantra, will become the guiding principle. We need to live a need based. जरूरत के हिसाब से हमको जिंदगी चाहिए, ना कि मेरे चाहत के हिसाब से. The God has created enough for everybody's needs, but not for everybody's greed. वो तो confirm है. So we have to be understanding this, that we have to be, this world that we are living today is not an inheritance from my ancestors. I believe it's I borrowed it from my next generation. So it's my duty that I conserve it and preserve it and take care of it. I need to pass on, as I would do my personal inheritance to my children. We must all believe and understand that we have to pass on this world in a good state for our next generation to take it forward. Yes, today's life will become a stop and go. It's no longer going to the ever speeding lifestyle. वो नहीं हो सकेगा. Stop and go. कहाँ पे महामारी फिर फैलेगी, फिर आप रुकोगे, फिर आप क्या करो. So you have to understand that these are situations which have come to be with us. I would say जो लोग जा चुके हैं वापस, वो जल्दी से वापस तो आएंगे नहीं अभी. They don't want to come back in a hurry, and of course even more so until we have got a medicine or a vaccine for this, where people will start trusting again. तो जो लोग गांव जा चुके हैं उनके लिए हम क्या करें? I mean, but let's understand, we have enough work over there. We have got this country needs to build its own rural infrastructure for sure. India lives in the villages, so why not use this as an opportunity to start creating infrastructure over there, rural infrastructure, which is actually going to create intrinsic value and take the nation forward sustainably. So यहाँ पे we've got the schemes like the Manrega and all. We've got enough work to do. We've got enough workforce back at home, which is going to look for lifestyles, which is going to look for living beings. So let's engage them in these type of activities. Let's do this. इसमें एक चीज और है कि there will be certain pockets where workforce is in excess, and there will be certain pockets where workforce is going to be in shortage.
Yeah.
Today, the workforce short in the urban areas, and we're going to feel it even more so moving forward. कि होगा. So I definitely believe that moving forward, there will be wage increases, salary increases in these areas which are most affected. जहाँ पे workforce हमको नहीं मिल रही है आज के डेट में, या मिलना अभाव होगा आगे तक जाके. तो वहाँ पे we must be ready to start, to look at paying something extra. Yes, we'll have to reskill ourselves. वैसे भी हम लोगों ने घर का काम करना सीख लिया, तो we are reskilling ourselves over here. So nothing bad, but we shall have to adapt. We shall have to adapt to new lifestyle and work style changes. यहाँ पे one thing I want very clear is the government has to play, the biggest role as a work enabler. We have to have a situation. We don't want to have a situation here where people are looking for funds or liquidity, because that's going to be the most affected short term or the immediate term fallout. So it is important that we don't think about survival alone. We must think that the industry has to flourish. The people have to, if the industries flourish, they create jobs, they create movement in the economy again. That's going to be critical. As I said, this is a pause, a refresh, a reboot that the world system requires, our lifestyle requires, and we must make the most of this opportunity. यहाँ पे people across the world are going to start looking for different places to create their industries and work style, right? So we have lost this opportunity at least twice in the last 2 decades. I hope we don't do it again. I just hope we don't. The major issues that anybody else would, or any foreigner or an FDI would look at, is land, labor laws, and most importantly, the certainties of our promises. We promise them the moon, we invite them, giving them, promising the moon. But we know we've done very, very stupid changes moving forward. We've done retrospective effect changes, which creates uncertainties. कोई आदमी इसमें भरोसा क्यों करेगा आपकी बात पे? आपने अपने बात करी और आपने अपने जबान तोड़ दी, क्यों आपको next time कोई भरोसा करे? तो how do we do this? Okay, we have to be very clear about our intention. We have to reassure the world about our intention and our sincere commitment that yes, boss, this time we're not going to let you down. हम जो बोल रहे हैं, we are bound to that. We'll stick to our words. we've got archaic laws in land and labor especially. But one good thing है कि states like UP and MP, they've come forward without anybody biting on their own. They've come because we'll lay off these rules for next 3 years. Labor laws, except for a couple of provisions, all other laws will be in abeyance. Now, these are things which will really, really be important for the Indian industrialist also. Because now, मैं कितने लोगों को कैसे बैठा के रखूं? अगर मेरा कल का काम का मेरे पास हाथ में भरोसा नहीं, तो really can I carry forward this type of workforce? I don't think so. Must be very, very difficult. Or our capital will be sapped over there only. So difficult है वो बात करना. यहाँ पे land ownership certainties also become an important part. I think today, after several decades, I think we've got a very strong central government. They have a convincing majority. Okay. We also have got some natural good leaders over there. And they have to sit down with the states and convince them. I would again use the word convince and not coerce them. All the states are definitely looking for major aids or help from the center. This would be the time for everybody to sit down together. Guys, you must compete for the FDI that is supposedly going to come in. Okay, let them compete amongst themselves. Competition will always get the best person out. We'll get the best amongst us. So this is where we have to get the central government to play its role. यहाँ पे fiscal deficits at this point of time will have to be let go. I mean, जो भी modern economists का एक बात करने का style है, we have to let it all go. Please understand, we have to unleash the wild free spirit. We cannot leash you down with something which is, not proven in today's scenario. So let the fiscal deficit go a bit retarded. How does it matter? After all, if we are living the today, tomorrow these things will come back. It's a matter of time. But today, to live out this today is the most important thing. So I would again suggest that the government has to enable work, has to enable liquidity, has to enable states to sit down together to make some competing and some good thinking formulas, rather than trying to compete with one another to do something stupid.
Right.
If I talk about myself today, okay, one thing good is that every Indian wants to own his own house. ये तो बात पक्की है. It's a cherished dream that I want to own my own house. The key has always been affordability. Here, the industry, the real estate industry can really take a lot of few things. They must share resources. It's important. They'll have to start co-opting with one another rather than competing or turning somebody down. You have to, lift each other's hands, take everybody stronger and rise up stronger. So, आज हम देख भी रहे हैं कि हर जगह municipalities and all are giving you better land reform or better incentives to do a bigger construction. The bigger the construction that you're going to create, the bigger the incentives it is there, rather than a standalone. A cluster housing अगर project है, it gets more incentives, get more support from the government and from everybody else, rather than a standalone. So why not why not pool your land resource, create a bigger infra over there, so that we can make the whole housing affordable. That's how it's going to be happening over there. We'll have to change the offerings. The demand is for the person who wants to own the house. So he's not going to want a lavish lifestyle. He wants an affordable and a decent accommodation. So we have to change our offerings that we are giving them right now. The banks, I would say, have to be even more innovative. They have to really start passing on the bank interest rates that the RBI has given them out. Okay, they have got a lot of repo cuts and these cuts, which I don't think have been translated. ये इन्होंने आगे customer को, consumer को pass on नहीं किया. So they have to be also thinking long term because we cannot do this. We have to help out the people this time. We have to increase their purchasing power, reduce their cost in whatever way. इसी के साथ में they can also be innovative enough to give you structured loan systems. Okay, you can we have a lower down payment. Initial payment में low करूँ, I'd give you a ballooning EMI, where the initial installments will be a bit lower and then they start increasing over a period of time. This will give me a lot of leverage to give me a lot of confidence to start buying, because today my purchasing power to my visibility is limited. So I'm going to try to conserve whatever I can. But if we start conserving this, we're going to create a whammy over here in the economy. How will we grow it otherwise? So this is what we need. Everybody can put in the chip in a bit, and get everybody to rise out stronger. One thing I agree with Varun again is work from home. Madhav, here, this is not the best thing for the real estate industry. Okay. This is not going to be for the people like TCS. If they go back home saying 75% of why do I need so much space I need? I don't need so much space then. Everybody will start doing digital. Okay. I know I need office spaces basically to seat my people or to store my records. If I do digital meetings, video meetings, and I do digital everything goes the same. So finally, but technology absorption will become the mantra. This will definitely help us cut down our costs, lower our overheads, right? We are seeing this places like New York City and LA and all have witnessed or are going to witness at least 20-25% downturn in the rentals or the land that they're giving out right now. Finally, a penny saved is a penny earned.
All right.
I think this is what everybody needs to do. Finally, I would say trust the God, boss. Don't make any panic situations. Don't do any panic reactions. Wait it out. It will go away for sure.
All right. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your remarks. A lot of interesting points. We'll again come back to it in the Q&A session.
Thank you.
Also, I would just like to remind the audience that if you have any questions, you can send it across to us. The number is displayed and we will share it also on the chat right now. So if you have any questions, please mention the panelist name and what question you have, and we'll try to take them after the 7 panelists have finished their remarks. All right. So we'll move on to our next panelist. Next panelist is Mr. Vivek Agarwal. He's based in Pune. He's been investing in the Indian equity markets for the last 2.5 decades now. He in fact has been investing in the US as well. So he's got a very global equity portfolio. He's been holding stocks like Facebook, Amazon, Nvidia for the last 6-7 years. So yeah. So let's move on to Mr. Vivek Agarwal. Hi, can you hear me well?
I can hear you, Madhav. Can you hear me?
Yes. Awesome. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Madhav. Thanks for having me.
I think the first question is that yesterday or on Friday, I saw in the news that the S&P 500 was up 2%. And the other news flow was that the unemployment in USA is at 15%. Could you explain to us why do markets go up while the economy goes down? For the viewers, could you just talk us through that aspect first?
See, markets are a discounting mechanism, and markets are not looking at what's happening today, because job losses which have happened today, it had already discounted that in March when we had steep falls. If you remember March, we were falling every day 5, 6, 7% when the markets didn't know what's going to happen with coronavirus situation. Now the market has formed a view that, okay, this looks like a temporary problem, which we will get over maybe in 2 quarters to 3 quarters down the line. So now that the real effect is coming through, it is not panicking for that. Market will start panicking 2 quarters down the line when if the earnings are still not improving. If they see the earnings are going to be worse 3 quarters down the line, then it will start panicking again. At the moment, the market has already panicked and has fallen almost 30-35% and then recovered another 20%. So we are still down a good 10-15% from the top, but we are close to the top in the US, yes. And what they're realizing is technology companies like Facebook, Amazon, Apple, these are not affected so badly. They, okay, the ads on Facebook are down, but it's not down so badly that they should be given such terrible beating that they've been given already. So market is going through that, is taking that view that we are having a 2 quarter or maximum 3 quarter kind of a drop in earnings, and then we'll come back, and it will come back strongly. So even in the US, where the people have been laid off, which is worse than 1930s, they are expecting that in 3 quarters time, people will be again employed again. It's not a doom and gloom altogether. That's my view.
So basically, it's relying on hope right now, right?
Correct. Market works on hope. Means at the moment, the hope is 2 quarters down the line, things will start improving, and that's what it is discounting at the moment. As we go along, if we find that things are not improving, things are getting worse, we could have volatility.
Understood. So people are waiting and watching and taking a view that government stimulus and all that kind of stuff will be helping us going down the line.
Of course, yes. Means government stimulus does play its part, but then it is only a part in the jigsaw. It is not the whole thing. The means people have to find their own ways and means to come out of this. And part of means government's help is definitely good, but things like work from home is a way of IT businesses continuing their business and continue to earn revenue and make money. So similarly, other businesses will have to find ways and means to get over this. As the previous panelist said, that we can do that in IT, but you cannot do that in the real estate business where it is a physical business.
Got it.
So you'll have to find ways, you have to modify your operating procedures so as to limit contact between the people for a period of time till we find a vaccine or a cure.
Got it. Any sector that you're very positive on today that you think is worth buying in this current scenario of post-COVID?
See, sectors like consumer stocks will always do well because, like in a country like India, we are a consuming country. Even after all these reforms that we've had, we are not a export-driven country. So consumer stocks will do very well. And as one thing I have a complete faith is in 20 years' time, India will be a $10 trillion economy. And that means around $8,000 per capita GDP. And when you have $8,000, it is the kind of consumption that we'll have is going to be huge. So consumption companies which are geared towards consumption or discretionary consumption will do very well. Insurance, I class insurance also as a discretionary consumable, even though it's a financial, but it can be classed as consumable as well, because as you become more wealthy, you would want to protect yourself from all sorts of risks. So insurance could be a sector which could see a lot of gains going forward.
That's a very interesting point. Insurance, something I've not heard so far. People have just been saying consumer and pharma. Maybe insurance could be an interesting sector, right? Yeah.
See, pharma, the story has already started. I mean, people are already bidding up the prices. Yeah. But insurance it's not going to be a 2-month or a 3-month kind of a story. It will take time, but it will happen. Like today, people are thinking of taking insurance against COVID-19. I'm getting calls every second day from insurance company, take an insurance against COVID-19. So we are trying to monetize it. So you will see a lot of innovation and people spending money on insurance.
Very interesting. Very interesting. We have 3 listed insurance companies, if I'm not wrong. I'll look at them after this call gets over.
See, you have a choice whether you want to go for life insurance or property insurance or general insurance, basically. So the choices are huge.
Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll come back to you in the Q&A. Thank you so much for your initial remarks.
Thank you. Thanks, Madhav.
So with that, we'll move to our next panelist, Mr. Purv Marda. Mr. Purv Marda is a director at Vivid Vision Trexum. He's been involved in foreign and international trade for the last 25 years. He also has his own tourism company, Vibrant Holidays. So Mr. Purv, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Madhav, thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. So my question to you is, if you could speak to us first on the export opportunity for India in a post-COVID world. If you could just speak about how you think things evolve there in the coming years.
So thank you, Madhav. Thank you for asking this question. And before that, thank you for having this knowledge session. It's, I would say, a path-breaking because, discussions, we would be discussing businesses with anybody and everybody, but talking with family members or with friends was always a taboo sort of subject considered. But today, the thought sharing and such interesting discussions that we have been hearing from the three panelists. Thank you to yourself. Thank you to Sharad Bhaiya to organize something like this. Very, very nice. Now, coming to your question, your question about how do I see this thing. I think the stage is set for something which is unprecedented, something which we have never seen before. I think the stage is set for probably your biggest bull run in terms of exports. We are going to be seeing, we have in the last 5, 7, 10 years, India has tried various schemes to generate employment, try in every aspect, but we have not seen much emphasis on the exports or the foreign trade. Indian government is closely to formulate a scheme which is going to be, which is definitely going to help India surpass all these export record, I would put it. This, if we go back a little bit, maybe about 30 years, the biggest bull run, if I would to say, in Indian exports has been in the era of Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh in 1991. It was a very interesting time. India was India, we were rated close to junk that time. We had we had pledged our gold, the IMF, and our condition, the conditions of export, and could be understood from the dollar market, the grey market. There used to be a difference of almost 20-25%. Two used to be $1 to a rupee, and in the grey market it's somewhere 38 to 40 rupees. That used to be the variance. It traveled a long way. That was a time where government gave in as much soft as possible. You had they made it 100% tax free to start off with. Any exports was made tax free. You had incentives or replenishments to import against your exports again. And incentives riding over and above in the range of about 10% to 20-21%. It was an absolute amazing story then, and we have, from there onwards, we have come a long way. So when I see this post-COVID era, we have all been hearing about the China and India story, but in the last 10 years, if I have to analyze, India has always been that number 2 in terms of a buyer's preference or choices. And we have seen China zoom ahead. Today, when the world perception is changing or towards China, we have already been hearing about how companies from Japan are planning to move out of China, and how the government is incentivizing them. So we are going to be seeing a lot of perceptional changes. We will see a lot of value change. We are going to see a lot of movement happening, and we will be seeing India is in that position. Our leadership is doing fine. We are today considered as a serious player, which we were not considered in 1991. In that age or that period, we survived only because of the extra socks. But today we are a much matured economy. We are much matured community of manufacturers, traders. We have learned our ways, and we are bracing for the occasion. We have always wanted to be in this position, And this is what I see as the biggest opportunity coming our way. We will be talking, if I have to break it down to the three segments, maybe your startup or SME, your mid segment, or maybe your large corporates. If I talk about your startup or SME, the biggest, their biggest fear at all time is their the recognition, or the recognition that they desire, and because of which they lose out on many orders, or many businesses, because they are not recognized. They don't have a perceived brand value. In this run, which is going to be post COVID, where your demand will rise higher than your supply, the possibility of demand outstripping the supply, everybody will get the opportunity. So anybody and everybody, whoever is prepared, is prepared to take upon this opportunity, shows sincerity, has the discipline which is required for an exporter, they will get this opportunity. Coming to the mid-size firms, people who have been exporting. So India has typically, what we have been exporting, we have commoditized. We have an infatuation for numbers, for size, and we have more or less commoditized ourselves. So I was recently talking to a good friend. They're one of the largest shirt exporters from Bangalore or from India. They have their stores pan India, and excellent shirts and garments they do manufacture. But whenever it came to exports, they used to always export it in the foreign buyers brand. Like they do export to CNA, to your MNS, to your CNK, and etc. etc. And they used to be doing that. So in our recent discussion, he was telling me, I'm not going to be making this mistake again. I will be insisting on my brand, because so when I'm talking about this segment, when they start branding themselves, they are going to be seeing higher yields coming in. They already have their capacity, which they are already, they are living up to those capacities. So they may not immediately go for a capacity expansion, but definitely they will be getting their higher yields because they will be insisting on their brands. And talking about the larger corporates, I think it's going to be it's a dream come true situation for them. You are going to be seeing money pouring in the form of joint ventures, joint investments. See, every country at this moment of time is talking about localization, about indigenous. So there will be a hybrid model sort of a thing, where what America had with China or Italy had with China, it is made in Italy, the product is of Italy, but the manufacturing sorry, it's not made in Italy, the product is of Italy, but the manufacturing was probably looked into China or other countries. We are going to see this opportunity coming down to us. The large corporates are going to be getting a lot of funds. They are going to get the joint venture. And why it's a dream come true for them is they are also going to be supported with a buyback. So people or corporates who have performed in the past, who have shown reliability, who have shown who have proven credentials, they too are going to benefit a lot. Overall, this is going to be a good situation for the exports. Government has exhausted its options, It has tried various options from the government's point of view. It will put in a lot of, it will introduce the required SOPs. It will give in, it is amongst the priority sector. You must have seen that when essential commodities were opened, even SEZ and government is already considering in such a, in so much of importance that when essential commodities were opened up, even SEZs and export businesses were allowed to be open. So I would, if I were to put about exports, if I was to talk about exports, I can just suggest that if anybody who has, who desires or who has a development budget, please put that little bit of your money towards exports, maybe 5 to 10%. This is going to pay off. This is going to be, I have seen the 1991 boom. I have seen that movement, and I predict this is going to be far bigger than that.
Wow, awesome. That's a very bullish, positive commentary. Great to hear that. Thank you so much, Apurv Kaka. All right. We'll move on to our next panelist. Our next panelist is Mr. Prince Kapoor. With a lot of super experienced people, we're moving back to a very young guy. So he's a co-founder at Urban Essentials. It's a VC-funded startup. It's 2 years old, and they sell personal care products based out of Chennai. Hi, Prince. Can you hear me?
Yes, Madhav. Hi.
Hi. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
So, Prince, quick question to you is, what are the kind of startup business models you think that can thrive from here? And what are the models which will get disrupted because of COVID? So it's obviously a huge structural shift. With startups in India, they've raised a lot of money. Which ones would you be positive or negative on?
Yeah, firstly, Madhav, thanks for having me. In this entire context, what I'd like to say is, because the startup that I work on is effectively in the CPG/FMCG space. One thing I'd like to say is this sector has hold it up very, and has been fairly resilient in terms of sort of providing a lot of daily essential products, be it online and offline. One thing that is most certainly got hit from a CPG/startup perspective is companies or business models that rely on a large fleet on street. So effectively, the Ubers of the world, any sort of mobility transport systems, even something as e-commerce. In the initial first few days of the lockdown, even now we face a lot of sort of physical challenges with e-commerce being supplied. So Amazon is still not able to, or Flipkart still isn't able to sort of supply end-to-end delivery, and they rely on a lot of startups to make this happen, by the way. So some of them, they have their own delivery system. Some of them, they of course outsource it to other companies in that sense. One thing that I'm directly getting from most companies who I speak to, the early stage CPG companies, is the fear in packaged food products such as Epigame or Raw Pressery. Most certainly, the people are thinking 20 times before touching these products. They are like, you know what, I'd rather don't want to consume these products. Something that's really standing out. Most friends of mine who run fintech companies, who've over the last 2-3 years, we've seen a boom in fintech per se. Fintech or lending has been thought of as a feature. So you build a platform where you have a lot of users, and by a click of a button, you're getting a 50,000 to a lakh or whatever, a couple of lakhs of loan. Now that's most certainly coming into question because people getting laid off, furloughs happening. So from that standpoint, most certainly lending companies have been affected. I don't know if it's good or bad. I would term it fairly opportunistic. Most companies who did not have the business of selling remotely sanitizers, essentials, have started selling them. I kind of sympathize with them because their cost structures are high and they kind of need to somewhere make the math work out. But there is the borderline case where I've heard of products that aren't safe being sold as sanitizers, etc., by sort of larger companies. Even food companies are then getting into this. So the lines are sort of blurring. I don't know if it's good or bad, to be honest. But the silver lining is most certainly companies who are lean, and there are very, very few companies, because at least in the startup system, what happens is there is almost sort of a badge of honor of hiring a lot of people in your company. So you can tell your relatives, I don't know where this comes from, but so apparently you can tell your relatives or your friends that you have 100 people, 150 member team. So that most certainly is going to come down. So previously it used to be 150 people working for you. Now it's going to be, listen, you know what? I have 20 people, and this is effectively the top line that we achieve. One more thing that FMCG startup companies are doing, I don't know, more so like more established ones, is trying to see how they can, not right now, but once the lockdown as and when slowly gets sort of reduced, is launch Southeast Asia. So effectively decouple India in some sense, even if it's 5-10% of the revenue coming from other countries in some form or manner. So I know that Epigamia or Raw Pressry are making inroads in Southeast Asia or in Middle East, for example. So yeah, that's another trend that I see.
Good. And any kind of adaptation that you think startup companies should make now, or they would have to make now to survive in this tough scenario?
Yeah, so previously it used to, so in terms of adaptations, the most immediate adaptation is, of course, reducing costs. Like I'm not saying something that's rocket science. Everyone's looking to reduce costs. Now, I'll tell you something very direct in our case. Now, we end up using companies such as Questcorp for placing people at stores to sell products. Now, this is something that a company of our scale to a company of Marico scale also does. Effectively, these are called store promoters. So when you enter a certain store, someone explaining the product to you, they are effectively on either team lead roles or say Questcorp or any other smaller company. Now, despite us sort of wanting to reduce costs in theory, in practice, what has happened is the Ministry of Home Affairs has issued a notice, and it's not an advisory, it's a notice. So we sought a legal opinion, and it effectively states that we can't lower the pay of these people, and we can't defer the payment as well. Now, while I do understand why the societal aspect of why the order is being released, what's going to happen is, in lieu of you wanting to preserve the people, the order is silent on whether you can fire them. So you might just end up paying the salary for that particular month, but the unintended consequences, you will end up firing them.
Yeah.
So that's something that the order is silent about. So most certainly reducing costs going ahead is very, very key. New product launch is definitely going to get affected. Something that we were doing in personal care segment, we personally were looking to launch, say, 4 other products. So let me just take a Dettol's case. I know that Dettol is looking to launch 3 other products. So when a company is looking to launch a few products in the CPG space, they do extensive sort of user sampling. Or even for that matter, who's using the competitor products, just going and talking to the users. Now, with work from home, all of this is partially happening like digitally, but you're still not getting the essence of it. Because if I'm asking Madhav, how are you feeling while you're using a confectionery product or say a personal care product, I'm able to only get tacit opinions through a video conference. It's fairly different. And more importantly, I'm not able to sample the product to you. So that's become a sort of big challenge in terms of launching new products per se.
Got it. Great. We'll come back to you in the Q&A. Thanks a lot for your initial remarks.
Thank you.
So move on to our next panelist. We have with us Mr. Mangalam Malu. He's a research analyst and anchor at CNBC TV18, one of India's leading financial news channels. He also has very keen interest in the Indian consumer sector. So, and you know, a lot of his talk shows are centered around companies like Britannia, HUL, Marico that I've seen. So, Mr. Mangalam, my question to you is, how do you see consumer behavior changing in the near term, medium term, long term? How do you think consumers change? It's a tough question, but what's your sort of sense?
It is absolutely a tough question, Madhav. First up, thank you for the generous words of praise that you're showering upon everyone out here and me. I'm least deserving of all of them. But as far as the consumer behavior is concerned, I'll start by making a caveat that consumer behavior is one of the most unpredictable things on earth. People say something, they do something, they intend to do something else, and eventually they purchase something else completely. And there is absolutely no correlation between that. So let's try and maybe anticipate at best what people are expecting, at least in the near term, medium term, and long term. Of course, in the near term, things are going to be extremely volatile, as we've seen across various countries that have opened as well. Case in point, something like China. The first day of opening, people lined outside all the luxury car makers, all the luxury vehicles, etc. Because one way of thinking was, maybe you'll only live once, and what is the point of saving? Might as well enjoy the time that you are here. So, like I said, consumer behavior is extremely unpredictable. But a few trends that emerge, at least in the near term. Presume that the lockdown ends tomorrow. What happens is that there will be a surge of demand as things open. First up, it will be a rush of genuine demand. As lockdown has extended, people have stocked up on staples. But as the months extend, your non-essentials also start becoming essentials. Case in point, something like a laptop charger. Some people have lost, functionings of their fridges. Some ovens haven't worked. Some air conditioners have stopped working. And at a time when things open up, there will be a pent-up, genuine demand fulfillment that will take place. That should happen for about a month or two. But at the same time, people should be cognizant of the fact that this may not be sustainable. This is just pent-up demand, which is bouncing back like a rubber ball. That is number one. Second thing is that, people will perhaps not buy as many luxurious products, because then they will be mindful of lower incomes, and they will be value conscious. We've had, a lot of people say that customers' affordability will be the key, and people have become value conscious. The speaker before me also said that they've stopped new product launches, and Marico also in their consumption call did say that they've stopped new launches. So that will be one of those things that will take a hit. So those are the two more certain things than the others. The more uncertain and muddy water is the middle of the band thing. Now, why is that? Because, one, when people are becoming value conscious, they are also not doing a lot of expenditure that they would have otherwise. So you and I would have gone for a holiday. Usually, you and I would have gone to a restaurant. You and I would have gone to a multiplex. But with all these things not happening, the economic room for slightly better expenses increases. And that's called the lipstick effect. It's a very interesting consumer behavior proposition. What happens is that when it was done on a study where women who could not afford expensive clothes during an economic downturn, they would feel happy by buying expensive lipsticks. And the demand for expensive lipsticks surged at a time when economic interest was very low. So that is something where I believe that, there is a big opportunity of demand. And that would mean, better quality, better small joys of life, a slightly higher quality mango that you're perhaps eating, or maybe, you will invest in a better quality television set, you will invest in a better quality home product, because now even men are working at home, as we've seen. And over and above all of that, instead of going abroad, you will try to live in a hotel close to your city, close to your place. So domestic inbound travel, there could be a lot more opportunity out there. Amusement parks, that is one of the biggest examples that we've seen. China opened their Disneyland, and out there it was full within an hour. The lines queued up, etc. So the middle of the road lipstick effect sort of consumer behavior is something that everyone is extremely positive about, or anticipating that this is something that would go higher. That's about the near term. In the medium term, things. I heard Varun at the Open when he said that TCS wants to make 75% of its workforce from home by 2025. And this is not because of coronavirus. This is because of the erstwhile trends that were there, it has only been accelerated by coronavirus. So what's common between the internet, penicillin, computers, jet engines, and even nuclear power? All of these accelerated, or the innovation of all of these accelerated during war times. And if corona can be likened to one of the wars, then there would be a lot of innovation in business models. Work from home is most definitely one of them. So we'll keep an eye out on how work from home changes consumer behavior, because once work from home happens, there is a lot more in-home consumption. People do not go outside. Restaurants, the model changes from a larger section of money coming in from in restaurant dining. A large part will come in from deliveries. The other thing that has changed, we are consuming a lot more in content online because cinema halls will not be working. So with Amazon, Netflix, Hotstar, all these things at home, you would like to order in and not go out. So moving out of home will be a little more difficult in the medium term as habits change. So we'll keep an eye out on how that pans out too. And my sense is that a lot of these business models like home delivery, work from home, supply chains of companies will change. Marico also tied up with Zomato to go ahead and deliver their goods. Jubilant Foodworks, the ones that delivered Domino's, had a tie up with ITC, where along with the pizza, you'd also be able to access a lot of these ITC products. So medium term is that sort of thing that we will keep an eye out on, consumer behavior. And finally, over the long term, the thing is that it is easier to predict things that won't change rather than things will change. So in the long term, what doesn't change? The human need for great experiences. Long term, what doesn't change? Human need for social gathering. Man is a social animal. Long term, what doesn't change? Human need to just evolve themselves and have a better quality of life. So just the way what happened after 9/11 to airport security, I think this is something that will happen on health security as well. So just the way you have all these metal scanners outside of hotels, airports, and every public place that you visit, there would be a common, thermal scanner for fever. You will have sanitizers all over the place, and people will be a little more mindful of distancing and their health. That doesn't mean meetings don't happen. That doesn't mean weddings don't happen. That doesn't mean that any large public gathering doesn't happen. That only means that the hotels of the future will be more accommodative for all these long-term consumer trends, which will, which is something that people will go back to in terms of hygiene. So we will watch out for how the hotel of the future is designed. It will incorporate a lot more of social distancing. Airlines, for instance, they will be working at lower capacities. So to make up for lower capacity, they would perhaps have to increase their prices. All of that is for the long term. So in the near term, you see a surge in genuine demand, genuine discretionary demand, which has become essential because of the lockdown. In the medium term, the business models change and people will try to, premiumize and focus on in-home experiences. And in the long term, designs will change to incorporate things that do not change.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that wonderful summary. We'll move on to our last panelist for today. We have Ms. Vamika Moore from Bangalore. Ms. Vamika works at BCG. She's a principal at BCG. She's been working there for the last 6 years. She's a graduate of IIM Lucknow. Hi, Vamika, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah. Okay. So, given as a consultant, you interact with a lot of the CXO suite. So what's on their mind? How are the projects that you guys are doing changing? How is the commentary varying? And how do you think business models and the kind of projects you all do change in the future? What are the initial feelers?
Thanks, Madhur, for the question. Also, thanks for having me. It's been really enriching hearing everyone speak before me. And I think I don't have, unlike most people in the panel, a lot of experience, but my job allows me to interact on a regular basis with a lot of senior folks from the industry. So there is a lot of learning by virtue of association. I think a couple of things. The one thing that is sort of common across industries, if you just see the senior guys, is thinking in almost two scales. There is a thinking of just here and now. How do we fight? How do we just survive? Keep things going. How do you make like very short-term, immediate tweaks to just keep the ship running, right? And then there is a bit of thinking which some people ahead of me in the panel also spoke about, which is how do you find some form of advantage out of this adversity in some sense, right? If I were to think about the first piece, across industries, actually there is a lot of let's not just react, but even on a short term, here and now, have like detailed plans in place. There are senior guys and ranging from industrial goods to CPG, all both very different fundamental types of industries who have like detailed contingency plans in place. So now with the lockdown easing, almost starting to think, what is my day 1, day 2, day 3 sort of plan in place? If in an extreme scenario there is a wave 2 that comes up, what do I do? Thinking of business continuity, right? And I think maintaining cash liquidity position honestly is like just top priority at this point, which also means a lot of hard calls being taken across sectors, across scales of companies. But that is sort of the need of the hour, which different companies are implementing and are executing in shapes and ways that they can, while trying to also act in the interest of employee well-being, right? It's a really tough situation right now, and there's no mincing words on that. But I think the more interesting thing, which is something to think about, is how do you find some opportunity out of this crisis? And it's not, yes, the crisis is unprecedented, but there are a lot of examples of players in the past at different points who have completely turned around and like literally created a sustainably new business model which has worked for them, right? Like if you think about the financial crisis, American Express completely repivoted in 2008-9. They developed a model purely based on digital, purely based on partnerships. If you compare 2008-9 to now, Amex is like, I mean, there's almost 1,000x surge in where their stocks used to be, right? So it's a shift that they made, that they were forced to make in a crisis, which continued to work for them over the years, right? If you compare it to a more of a health crisis, if you think of the SARS epidemic that broke out in China, yes, not comparable to corona virus in some sense at all, but also within China, if you think about it, SARS was huge. Alibaba literally launched a new B2C marketplace called Taobao in 2003 when the SARS epidemic broke out. Today, they have 50% market share. So there are, I think, companies who have managed to, in this time, stay calm, but also really do some forward-thinking planning. I think, like the speaker before me said, you can't predict consumer behavior. There are some surges which may be temporary, but there are some fundamental shifts that will happen. If you can think what that means for your company and be willing to, in some sense, reset, I think that is really key. There are two broad ways that I've seen at least Indian companies across sectors doing this. There is an inward looking, let me introspect and just see what can I do to just restructure my balance sheet, restructure my costs. As a consulting firm in India, we would do a lot of, for example, a lot of these ops, incremental ops takeout transformation type of projects. People are thinking fundamentally different now. They're thinking, how can I completely restructure? Can I totally rethink how my manufacturing is done? Can I completely rethink my office space? More than incremental, there is an appetite to actually, can I use digital? Even like large so-called traditional companies, family businesses, promoter-led companies, very well set in their ways, are very open to the idea that, my success formula doesn't necessarily hold. Let me see what I can do. And then there is obviously a more market-facing kind of a change, right? Like really seeing how consumer behavior is changing. If we look at just all of us on this call, right? I mean, probably if you think of the last 7 days, you have attended some webinars online. You may have done an online, I don't know, like a live cult fitness training kind of a class. I was joking with my father that, the world has finally caught up to his level of hygiene. We're using sanitizers, we're using Dettol so regularly. There are a lot of tiny changes in our day-to-day habits happening, but as a smart leader of a business, you have to think, what does that mean for you? Is there a adjacent product you can get into? Do you need to change your messaging in how you communicate? Yes, we are not stepping outside right now, but we can't forget that pre-COVID, experiences over products was in some sense the biggest change that was happening in Indian consumers. It's not like, I mean, I wouldn't like to believe that there's a world where, you know, people completely stop going out. But in the interim, till we reach to you know, a normal that we're more okay with, how do you adapt and stay relevant? I think that is just going.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for your comments. I think now that we're done with all the panelists, we've got quite a few questions which have come. Given the lack of time, we'll just probably stick to one question per panelist, one or two questions. So I'll just go in order, the way that we started. So the question for Mr. Varun Kabra is, what do you think the impact could be on the commercial real estate and residential real estate market? So given in Chennai, for example, we have TCS Sirusari, which I've seen, and it creates this entire community around it where thousands of people live. And I think you worked there in the past as well, in such a township or big IT park. So when this happens, what's your view on how commercial and residential real estate changes going forward?
So, yeah, hi, can you hear me, Madhav?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, see, with the work from home coming in, the commercial real estate concept is will undergo a change. As you know, I think Mr. Mangalam pointed out that a lot of these companies will end up saving a lot of rentals in terms of their fixed costs and everything. Because what's going to happen now is all these companies, including where I'm working or the the other IT services, the big firms, as you may say it, they are all looking at reducing the workforce who are coming to their office. So this will actually translate into smaller workspaces. And at the same time, now I think there is an idea floating around that your houses will basically become your offices. So now people who are looking at either renting a house or buying a residential house, now they will be looking at a house which is going to act as an office also. So it's going to be maybe someone who was looking for a one room will now actually look for two rooms, or someone who's looking for two rooms might actually say that idea, that new idea that, you know, I mean, of having
Sorry, can you please go ahead? There was a bit of a lag on the line.
Yeah. So do you want me to repeat? Start from scratch? Was
Yeah,
I
so
not
you
audible?
said that people will move from 1 BHK to 2 BHK and they could take larger homes, which is a pretty
Correct.
interesting insight, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because see, right now a lot of people are struggling. I mean, what is happening is people who are living in 1 BHK or even in sharing, you know, in kind of PGs and everyone, suddenly you've come up with a work from home concept and they actually do not know where to work. There's either a lot of noise, there's a lot of disturbance. So now that is going to become permanent. I mean, your workforce that is going to office will reduce in the coming future, because what this pandemic has done is it has made IT companies realize that they can save these rental costs and everything, because they are able to deliver services from home at such a large scale, which they were not trying it out earlier. They were doing this work from home, but that was once in a, you know, if 10 people, 15 people taking at a time or something like that. but not at such a large scale when 95% of your population is actually working from home. So it will be a good, interesting space. And in fact, there's one more point. There's a lot of this co-working space that is booming out, where 6 or 7 offices were sharing the same floor. Now, that concept also might take a hit because you might not want to share your floor because of the number of people that you have to maintain social distancing. You might want just one floor for yourself or one building for yourself. So yeah, commercial real estate will take a hit, especially with the offices bringing down their infrastructure costs, their rental costs and everything. But at the same time, a very new thing might crop up, which is people who are working from home might actually look out for relatively, a space where you can work.
That's a great point, because generally what we hear in real estate is that people want to make homes more affordable and make homes smaller going ahead. But a very interesting point that you made is people might actually want larger houses because they will be working from home, right? So that's a very contra view, and it's a very interesting insight. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the next question that we have for Mr. Bankat Panthania. The question is very simple. It's a one-line question. What do we need to get real estate going ahead, to get the whole engine started? And also a follow-on question, which is from my side, is cities like Mumbai, which have seen real estate prices at very high levels, will builders finally have to cut prices to sell inventory because they're starving for liquidity? So yeah, 2 parts. One is what to get real estate starting again, and can prices go down?
Madhav, to get the real estate going, the first thing first, we need the people to start working. So that's been allowed. Okay. Now that's the first foremost. Second, what we need is really that, okay, these type of pent-up buying that we understand is there. So if that can be accommodated along with the financial institutions being more forward lending or more forthcoming, I think that's some key thing. What has started to happen, that's a certainty now. Most of the places started to work. So, and they have some bookings to take them forward for the next couple of quarters at least. I hope what Mangalam said, that there'll be pent-up buying and discretionary buying coming up. That should really add to the world thing.
And in terms of the real estate prices, do you think places like Loprel or Worli, which have seen very high prices, rental yields are like what, 1.5–2%? Do you think prices finally come down here? What would your view be on that?
I mean, that's a certainty, Madhav. I certainly believe your demand for workspace is going to go down. And the area they're talking about, Lower Parel, these are basically workplaces. So if I talk about myself, we were going to consider to buy some more space in the near future. Now, with this experience the last 2 months, I believe I really don't need it. I could ask my people to work in different shifts, flexible work timings, and most of them also work from home. I mean, if not on a regular basis, but on an intermittent basis. We can't stop us for a day or two, take a day or two off, work from home. So I don't really think I would really require more space going forward. Also, then I can digitalize my records. As I said, we need office spaces for 2 things. One, to seat the people. The second is to store my records. If my records can become digitalized, okay, then why do I need such a big space? So definitely one for me, I would definitely not want to buy some more office space in the near future, for sure. So that's going to take a hit, and the demand supply. If the demand is low, the supply is higher, of course, we'll see those market economic practices come into play. So I do believe rentals will come down.
Thank you so much. Getting very strong views from participants. Real estate, work from home. It's awesome. Moving on to the next question that we have for Mr. Vivek Agarwal. The question is something that even I've been pondering over, is on the auto sector in the stock markets. So going ahead, as people get afraid of traveling on an Uber or Ola, do you think India has it in it for the auto buying, in terms of people buying their own 2-wheelers or 4-wheelers going up? So the auto sector has been quite beaten down because volumes are so low. Do you think that there can be a recovery in the auto sector on buying because people want a safer mode of transport for themselves?
Yes, auto sector could see a revival, but it will take time, because in India, even almost 70% of the vehicles are financed. As long as finance is available, people will go out and buy vehicles. And but then that will not be the first thing on their minds when the lockdown gets over. So it will take a period of time, maybe 6 months to a year down the line. We could have a boom in automobile companies going on because, and anyway, see what happens with auto is demand is does not get destroyed, it gets postponed. Like if I wanted to buy a car now, it has become expensive because of BS6. I'll wait for 5-6 months to build up a little bit more of a cash position and then take the loan and buy a car. But I'll not go back on my idea of not of buying a car. I might even think of buying a second-hand car instead of buying a new car. But demand is there, and Indian people are very aspirational. So we will buy vehicles, and it is going to boom. It's only a matter of time. And the number of vehicles that we have per 100 or per 1,000 people is way too low. So that demand will come back.
So it's basically delayed but not destroyed.
Correct. Correct.
But with job losses and income cuts, it could take quite some time, right? Do you think it's going to be 1 year or longer before the demand comes back for the sector?
As I said, it could be 6 months or longer. Yeah, but see, once the lockdown gets lifted and as things start to become normalized, we are not going back to a world where everyone's going to be home. We still want to go out, and if going out in a rented vehicle or a Ola or Uber is not going to be the norm, then you would want our own personal vehicles, because you would not want to go out in a public transport as well. So where we can distance ourselves. So demand for vehicles will come back. It's only a matter of time.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much. We'll move to the next question for Mr. Apurv Marda. So, I think you had indicated that there are certain export products that people should focus upon, and that could be a big opportunity going ahead. So the question is there any particular product or segment that you think could be very positive for India going ahead? That could be a big export opportunity in the next 3 to 5 years. Anything that you're looking at in particular?
Madhav, I would put like no cookie points for guessing pharmaceutical, chemicals, or food stuff. We will be seeing a tremendous growth over there. But exports, general perception with exports is a lot of us look at exports only as goods. But exports also is services. We have seen in the last 10 to 15 years how software companies have led the way through. They are one of the highest exporters from India now in any terms. And I see the service sector also getting a very big boost. We will see a lot of people coming down to India to fulfill their requirements. So lot of call centers coming up, supporting the exports of services is what I would see. A sector which I really think India should be working towards should be the exports of our culture. So we are talking about our Indian movies, Indian food, Indian artifacts, Indian handicrafts. And this is one sector which probably will do a lot of good to India in the long run. And there is a very, very good demand. It's a niche sector as of now, and people should look into this sector as well.
And another follow-up question that we have is, you said that these smaller companies should be branding more, but isn't it more easier said than done, because it requires a lot of investment and expense? So do these smaller companies have the money power to do it, or they might have done it already before? So what are the challenges that they might need to overcome, or strategy that they may need to adopt for branding?
So they probably need to get started with their systems. If we get the systems in place and we have the discipline. So there was nobody who was born big. So there has been, for smaller companies, they may start with smaller orders, which they are in a position to fulfill. And so every size will have an equal or some matching, every side will have their matching counterpart waiting for them. So there will be a lot of importers in countries otherwise who are not seeking branded, who are willing to experiment. So there will be a big opportunity lying over there. So recently we were working with a CA, a CA firm, and they have done work for some clients, and the revenue that they have booked in their books is somewhere near 100 crore rupees, for which they are going to be getting incentives. So that is and so India is a hub for knowledge, and we should live to that potential.
So they need to start off with the small stuff, do smaller orders, get the
systems in place. Yeah.
And then
get the systems in place, get the discipline. It won't harm them. It won't harm them. The world is more or less coming down to uniform systems. So so even if they get their systems in place, and even if they make that expenditure and they still don't get the orders, then they have nothing to lose over there. They're just getting systematic.
Got it. It's a very interesting topic for sure. Moving on to our next panelist, Mr. Prince Kapoor. So the question for you is, what do you think about the fundraising environment in India? So a lot of companies have raised a lot of money, likes of CureFit or likes of Nykaa, Byju's. So how do you see the fundraising environment changing for these different companies in the next 1 to 2 years? Do you think it gets better, worse? What's your view on that?
Yeah, just one quick follow-up comment I had to add to the first two questions that you asked. One unintended consequence is REITs will definitely get hit, because that's something that I noticed when we spoke about commercial office space. I don't know how they're performing after this call. I probably have to go and check the facts. But most certainly, even globally, they'll get hit, because companies most certainly don't want to take up as much space. But specific to your question about like fundraising environment, I personally know of at least 3 retail specific sort of companies, mid-stage companies rather, 300 to 500 stores sort of chains who refunds. Now, they did get term sheets, and just as COVID sort of hit, they immediately stopped. And it stopped sort of indefinitely for the next sort of 6 months. Even for companies that have even for companies that have cash in the bank, most certainly even top-up rounds are at either the similar valuation or maybe lower ones. Most founders who I'm speaking to have been mentioning that they've been told by most of the investors that for at least the next 15 odd months, preserve cash. Do not expect us to probably bail you out in the worst circumstance. Of course, that is very case to case depending upon what sort of company, which sector they perform in. So Nykaa would maybe behave a lot more differently. So people would probably be a lot more kinder to Nykaa because they'd be able to bounce back a lot more quicker than that did just want to raise or were in the market to raise capital. There is no easy answer, because every VC fund out there has most certainly stopped looking at new investments and they only focus on saving the current ones, at least for the foreseeable 6 to 8 months. There is no easy way out.
Understood. All right. We'll move to the next participant, Mr. Mangalam Malu. So the question that's coming for you from the audience is, what do you think will be the trend in luxury retail in the near and the medium term?
The trend in luxury retail in the near and the medium term. Near term, there wouldn't be much in terms of demand coming in because there is no luxury retail which is pent up. However, medium term, you will have the lipstick effect playing out in luxury retail, where those who cannot, buy the latest iPhone will perhaps have to content themselves by buying maybe the latest another gadget of a similar or a lower price. Luxury retail will do well over the medium and long term. Near term, of course, not. However, having said that, the business model has to really change, because right now we've seen, a lot of these luxury restaurants, luxury hotels, and all of that, they believe in personalized services and they believe in keeping the customer close to themselves. Maybe with distancing, the brands will have to position themselves in a way that people see value for not just the brand, but also, safety. That would be more important. That will be an added variable in luxury retail, because not only is my brand the best brand when it comes to the quality of the product, it is also the safest. So that will be a new variable which will be added, not just to luxury, but across the board, but more so in luxury because of the prices that are involved. So let's see how that pans out.
All right. Moving on to Ms. Bhavika, the question that's coming for you from the audience is, you want to know, is there any industry in India that you think will be a strong one in the next 10 years that's going to boom? In all your analysis and work that you guys have done, any initial signs of which industry could be a big one?
Tough question. I think even if I think that for a minute this crisis is not there, to predict a 10-year horizon is always tricky. But I think we've mentioned this a couple of times in the course of this session as well. But no-brainers like pharma, insurance, etc., will definitely pick up. I think insurance is one thing that actually, from whatever we've been reading, studying as well, is something that will have a much longer, more stable. I think a general sense of health, wellness, hygiene is a consumer trend which may stick. It may start to fundamentally define behavior. It could play out in different ways in different industries. So, for example, insurance is a one very straight, direct correlation. But I think similar to what I think Mangalam was also alluding to earlier, in a lot of other industries also, as a trend, how do you adopt this health, wellness, need for safety and make it more core to yourself will become important. But if I have to stick to an industry, I think just how digital as a horizontal, will get applied everywhere is going to become big. Look, we've been talking about digital for many years, and there are always skeptics who believe that digital is not for everyone. It's not for all consumers. It's not for all categories. But in this period of lockdown, what's happening is there's a lot of forced digital adoption that's happening. So when people are being forced to try something for the first time, if they end up having a smooth enough experience, they may start getting used to it, right? Like apparel was a category that people were more comfortable buying online. Consumer goods, CPG, food products were classic examples of things. I would make a list and go to my Kirana store. But in this lockdown, I'm being forced to try it. So I think digital e-com is one thing, as cliche as it sounds, but we may have gained a few years. It was already an accelerating trend, but it might just spike.
All right. Okay. We're seriously out of time, but I think we'll just take the last one or two more questions that we have, and then we can wrap up. So I think just one more question that is coming from Mr. Varun is, with work from home becoming the norm, what do you think could be the impact on hourly rates for IT companies, and what could be the impact on their margins?
Can you hear me, Madhav?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. See, margins are going to get impacted. They will be impacted in a big way, because now your companies used to earn margins with onshoring the employees, basically sending them, out of India and allocating them in the client location. So that's not going to happen now, at least for another 6-7 months for sure. So that way your margins are going to get affected. And similarly, what will also happen is a lot of these clients don't have the discretionary IT budgets with them. That will reduce. So they will also negotiate with us, with the IT companies, for either giving some discounts or deferred payments, or, they might even reduce the number of resources that are allocated to their projects and everything. So that will surely have an impact on the margins, where we might have to renegotiate, cut down our what do you call, the rates and everything, so that we are still in the business for now, so that we can tide over this particular crisis. So margins will surely have an effect, but at the same time, it's the time to innovate. And if any IT company is investing in its automation and cloud capabilities, they are bound to survive, because that is the future, and most of the companies would want the digital way of communication and digitization of their business.
All right. We have quite a few questions remaining, but we see out time. I'll take the last question. This one's from Mr. Apur Marda. So the question is that as people have incremental savings, do you think there could be a jump in 2 to 3 day holidays in India? So people going to, the places in India that haven't been relatively less explored. So with your tourism and travel background, do you think that's something you would focus upon?
For sure, Madhav, the entire tourism perspective, I'm sure everybody understands it's probably taken the biggest hit as of now. But what is happening and the way tours in the future are shaping up, they will become much more thematic. They will be much more, the travel would become much more purposeful. We will see a lot of green tourism happening. And yes, I mean, say a lot of people want to be exploring for the immediate movement. We will see people traveling short distances for sure. It depends, I mean, say on individual perspective or the travel perspective or your travel history. Now, what do you call short? Somebody calls he who used to, holiday most of the times, probably in USA. So Dubai may be short for him. Somebody who has been talking who has been going to Southeast Asian countries, he would definitely want to explore more of India. Yes, Manglam.
Mute Manglam there.
Yeah. So, it's a very fair point that you're making out there. And I was just going through some numbers. So just to add some numbers to the points that you're making, India's outbound tourists are close to around 26 to 27 million per year. That's about 2.7 crore people. And inbound tourists are close to around 10 million. So the foreigners who come to India are close to around 1 crore every year. And in these numbers, tourism accounts for 10% of our GDP. The outbound tourists, the 26 million people, if they start traveling in India, for a variety of reasons. One, long flights will be unsafe. Secondly, long flights will be a lot more expensive. And thirdly, because they have less economic, ability to spend, they're more likely to do 2 to 3 day vacations. And over and above all of that, the government's recent thrust on developing Indian tourist destinations would be extremely important. And that would perhaps also be one of the ways to pump up our economy going forward, because in 10 million tourists, tourism accounts for 10% of our GDP. If these 26 million outbound tourists also start traveling in India, that could create a whole lot of employment and pump prime the economy. So that's
Absolutely.
one of the biggest things that people are expecting.
It will, I mean, say government needs to put in the infrastructure in place, and they rightly, seeing the potential, they would want to be doing that. And yes, we will see, tourism in the last couple of years, we've started seeing staycations happening. I mean, say staycations for people, just to explain them, are, people just, instead of flying anywhere, they book a hotel room in the same city where they are and take a good break for 2 or 3 days. So we expect tiny steps for people to start off with. Tourism is something which is more need-based, and it is surely going to bounce back from whatever we have, whatever we are seeing as of now. And people are, I keep on getting calls from so many friends and relatives that when is this going to end, and we want to jump out. We are seriously bored, and yeah, this is going to be a very interesting sector. But what I would say is it will be much more purposeful. People would want to travel with a purpose. exploring cultures is a theme which people will have high on their mind. They would want to see and meet people where they want to find more about the entire perspective.
Awesome. I still have questions. What I will do is I will pass it on to the participants, and whoever's asked the question, I'll connect them. That will be better. What I'll do is I'll just do a quick conclusion. My insights that I've taken away, I think starting with Mr. Varun Kabra, very clear thing, work from home is here to stay. There will be an impact on commercial real estate that's likely to take a hit, but residential homes can get larger, might not get smaller, because that was my sort of thought process earlier, that people are looking for more affordability, but it could go the other way around. So we have to see how things shape up. With Mr. Pankaj Manthania, very clear, he's saying, commercial real estate prices are going to take a hit, demand supply is going to go into imbalance. So we'll have to deal with lower asset prices. And rental yields have anyways been so poor. So we'll have to see how things shape up. Another sort of view from him is we need to rescale ourselves going ahead. And also he thinks the government should focus upon the rural infrastructure. We have a lot of excess labor there, which might not come back. So we might look to invest in the rural space when the opportunity is there. Mr. Vivek Agarwal, market is clearly sort of discounted a weak FY21. It's looking at FY22 already. So we'll have to see 2 quarters down the line what happens. If the economy doesn't recover in the way people are expecting, we could see another correction in the market. So it's more of a wait and watch scenario. It's not a very strong recovery or recovery which is here to stay. So we'll have to be more measured. On the auto sector, he thinks demand is delayed, not destroyed. Moving on to Mr. Prince, he sees impact on packaged food businesses like Epigami and Raw Pressery. They're likely to see some impact. Startups are going to look at hiring low people and focusing on their efficiency aspect, then saying that, we have 200 people, 300 people, that might not be the focus going ahead. So being leaner is going to be the badge of honor, not having a bulgy employee cost. Mr. Mangalam Malu, on consumer behavior, he spoke about the lipstick effect, where people might look to satisfy their consumption desires with buying smaller items. With all the savings that they'll be doing, they might put forward or put ahead more higher end purchases. And also long term, he thinks a lot of the consumer behavior is going to come back. Man is after all a social animal. So social gatherings will eventually come back, but with more security protocols, more health protocols at airports, hotels. Hotels might have to be redesigned. So that's something we need to keep a track of. The hotels of the past, airports of the past might not be the same. Products of the past might not be the same. Ms. Vamika Mimani, breaking it down into the short and the long term. Short term, very interestingly, companies are still looking for opportunity. How can they come out stronger? Along with their business continuity planning, they're also focusing upon how they can come out stronger. She gave examples of Alibaba, examples of Amex, who in the past have made use of these opportunities to actually get stronger, grow market share. I think it'll be interesting to see 2-3 years later, once we start analyzing which companies put their best foot forward and have actually grown their business in these trying times. And it clearly has to be by them changing their operations, looking for different opportunities. But near term, it's all about preserving the liquidity. So I think it's about staying solvent near term, looking for the opportunity in the longer term. So with that, I think we'll conclude the panel discussion today. Thank you everybody for joining. I hope you took away a lot of insights. We would like to just add thanks first of all to all the panelists, all the viewers who've joined us today. We also have special thanks to Mr. Hemant Marda and the POOF Kolkata Maheshwari Sabha, members of BNI Knights, Mr. Kashi Khandelwal, who's director at LIC, and members of the Kolkata Press Club. I understand this program was beamed live in Kolkata. So I hope you all had a good time taking away good insights. I definitely did. Learned a lot talking to all the panelists and learning a lot from them. So great enriching experience. Hope it was the same for you as well. Stay safe and hope to meet all of you guys soon. Thank you. Bye.